Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sean McDermott, coming live from New York City. And with me is Charles Simones. He's our VP. I am the President and CEO of Windward Consulting Group. And with me is Charles Simones, our Vice President of Solutions. So we today we're just going to jump right into it. No need for a lot of intros or anything like that, because we have a lot of ground to cover and in a short amount of time. So today's webinar is called Unleashing Service Reliability. We're going to be talking about generative AI, CMDB, and asset management as foundations of creating a Gen AI strategy. We're also going to be talking about like Now Assist and AI agents and things like that. So sorry, let me get to. So the agenda today is really kind of in four primary parts. One, we're going to talk a little bit about service reliability, because as the title of the webinar says, Unleashing Service Reliability, and some people may be like, what exactly is that? And we have our own definition here of that. And then we're going to talk about Gen AI and Now Assist. We're going to talk about some of the fundamental foundational technologies of CMDB, asset management. Charles will cover CSDM a little bit too. And then we'll talk about like Now Assist and where to go, and how do you get started. So with that, that's the overall agenda. We're targeting 30 minutes and then 15 minutes in Q&A, so we're going to try and keep this whole thing to 45 minutes. So if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat group. I think the chat group will probably be the best place to put questions. We will probably answer them at the end, unless I see something that I think is relevant to the conversation at hand. I may break in on Charles and ask him a question. You okay with that, Charles?
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, awesome. So let's just get started. Let's talk a little bit about service reliability, because it's not a term that's thrown out there a lot in the context of what we're talking about today. So when I talk to customers and other people in my orbit, I try to keep things very simple. And when I talk about digital transformation, one of the things I say is, a successful digital transformation strategy and implement execution is really focused on two things: innovation. So if you're not innovating, you're not moving the needle, you're not transforming anything. You're just kind of, keeping the lights on. So that's not digital transformation by itself. And the second thing is service reliability. So the ability to ensure that all your services, these new innovative things that you're deploying, whether it be mobile applications, AI, customer engagement strategies, whatever you're trying to do and modernize, if it's not reliable, then it's kind of a waste of investment. So in the simplest form, when I look at successful digital transformation, I look at these two things. We as an organization focus entirely on service reliability. So what is service reliability? For us, service reliability is balancing kind of three primary areas. I'm just going to wrap all this up. One is service management. So really, this is kind of the foundational platform workflow. You can think about it as ticketing. You can talk about it as platform integration, single data sources, things like that. That's really kind of foundational to service reliability. The second primary area we look at is operations management. These are the organizations that work 24/7, monitoring, reactive, proactive management. As I like to say, they're on the front line of the organization and keeping services up and available 100%. And security operations is the third area. And, we started wrapping in security. We've been around for 27 years. And we started bringing in security probably about 10 years ago into our service reliability, because what's happening now, and I think we all see this, is that there's a very blurred line between infrastructure operations, security operations. They use a lot of the same tools, whether it's ServiceNow or Splunk and things like that. They're utilizing the same data models for CMDB, and so there's a lot of overlap there. And if a service goes down because some type of security breach, or it goes down because some piece of infrastructure stops responding, it has a net result of an outage. So we brought this in about 10 years ago, and it's core to our philosophy on service reliability. So I wanted to kind of paint the picture around service reliability. If you're a ServiceNow person, and you're probably sitting there going, okay, how does this map to like my ServiceNow? Think of service reliability as the combination of ITSM, ITOM, ITAM, and SecOps. The collection of all those areas is what we consider service reliability. So I want to kind of paint that picture, and now we'll kind of jump into things. So um, first area we're going to talk about, so Charles, you're up, is really what does service reliability mean in the age of like AI and generative AI, things like that.
All right, thank you, Sean. So, really just kind of setting the context, how you're operating and working with your customers today. Obviously, you have services that you're providing to your customers. Those services are provided and made up potentially of, infrastructure and applications of teams and getting those services to those customers and employees that you have here in the center. Which might be utilizing those services or supporting those services that you're providing across those customers. And then you've got your operational teams that are keeping, all that, data and systems in play. So as we look at, how we make improvements in operations, it's important to think about, each of these stakeholders, each of these persons' role within that food chain. Where do they interact either with the data or where do they interact with each other? As we're looking to improve and make benefit there. So just a little context for that. And then the next slide, Sean. And then if we think about, how we bring, efficiency, right, to those operations, through examples of AI, right? Some of it is enabling those initial providers to have more data at their fingertips or readiness. You can also think about those transitions between employees where maybe a ticket gets raised to level one or from a customer to level one, and you have a chat interaction that needs to be stored or interpreted, right? And then you got a ticket, and then maybe that ticket gets passed to level two, so you have these interaction areas between, one group that might be working to support operations. All of those areas where those data intersects are prime areas where, AI is going to provide value. Especially with the last release of what ServiceNow has about available for Gen AI, which we'll talk through. Typically, how we've looked at improving operations or organizations have looked at operations in the past is really looking at automations and workflow. So, one of the things you can think about as you're thinking about your overall, AI journey, the values there or those similar areas where you have applied automation in the past are also areas where AI is going to be able to have a presence to help move that forward for you quicker. From the service perspective, it's how can I get my services to my users easier? Examples of those are, through, chat conversations or, can I actually just type in, hey, I'd like a password reset, or I'd like to order something, and then be prompted through the inputs instead of filling out a form. So thinking about those interaction methods that you're using to intake that. So whether email, chat, tickets, whether you're generating that through telemetry, which is more on the right side there with the operational folks. But again, as you're thinking about this, one of the values that ServiceNow obviously brings is you got a single platform for this. We're looking at, and you should start with some of those core areas or core processes that your teams are doing repetitively and over again. So looking for areas of maximum benefit, and then obviously measuring that growth as you're moving ahead. So we can move to the next slide. And this is just a look at, how organizations might look at improvements of, automating and improving those operations today. So this one is really looking at the number of staff versus the supporting incidents that they're achieving or interacting with. So this is just another way of measuring. I think one of the things that's important as you're looking at your journey of improvement, whether it be through AI or through automation, is picking the right metrics that you want to measure for your improvements. I had an example of a customer who had implemented automations, and their metric was they wanted to have a automated remediation or automated action for each ticket type that might come in. Um, then they implemented a new monitoring system and got, 50, 150 new types of incidents that came in. So, their metrics all got switched up. So it's important to think about, as you look for your organization's goals, whether it's, headcount reduction or productivity enablements or response time like MTTR and the others, that you're picking those in the right approach that over time you can get the gross and you don't end up with a denominator change because you picked the wrong measure to go after. I think that's that for this section. I just wanted to kind of set the table there.
Yeah. So one of the things that we wanted to address, and Charles, I'd love to get your point on this more, is AI is only as good as the data it can have access to, right? That's one of the things about generative AI and the internet is that it's collecting data from a lot of different sources. And there's all kinds of conversations about that, right? And whether it's pulling in copyright information and stuff like that. But inside the business and what we're talking about, it's really focused on the CMDB, asset management, and other kind of data sources. So, love to have you talk more about that.
Sure. I mean, I think at a very high level, Sean, I mean, what you just mentioned is important as folks decide on how they want to dig into an AI technology. So, one of the important things is if you're, one of the things about, let's say, using, let's say, ServiceNow's AI solution, or just going out to, an open source, open AI or one of the others that's out on the marketplace. If you think about what ServiceNow has built, they built their models on the industry models that are available out there. They've just been working and training them for the last few years to give them the context. So it's as you're thinking about, making decisions on, AI technologies moving down the path, that's one very important aspect just from a data perspective, as that is. If you think about, I want to look at my operational data. I have ServiceNow in play. I'm using all of that. There's a lot of value because all of your data is in one location in ServiceNow that your data now has context and it has some boundaries, right, around the data that you want to use that you're supporting your teams for operations. So if you chose to use an outside LLM, all of those things might come in that you just mentioned, like, whatever happened back in 1976 for a train derailment or something has nothing to do with how I want to run my operations. So it gives you some efficiencies and it gives you context of that data so that the AI can perform better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I think that one of I want to give a precursor to something we're working on right now at Windward, and that is like AI governance. And I know you and I've had a lot of conversations, and so everyone on the webinar or seeing this on demand, stay tuned. In the next probably 90 to 120 days, we're gonna be starting to release a lot of information around AI governance because I think that's a question that is holding people up right now. Is like, how do I know what my AI is doing? I'm going to start building these chats, these chat bots, or these AI agents. How do I know what access information they have access to? What tables in the database? How is it using that information? But that's a subject for our future. So we'll continue on.
It is a subject. Just a small statement. I heard something in a meeting today that an AI got sued because it provided a response that was inappropriate, and now the courts are deciding on who is going to be responsible for that. But at the end of the day, right, that organization that is using the AI and the data. it's going to need to come back to that, right? So a couple of things that's important to note that
Is the AI going to represent itself in court in the
well, exactly, right? Or the organization, right? So ultimately, your organization's going to, when that compliance officer or security comes back to you and says, okay, this AI provided this answer, what data did it have access to and when, right? So how am I going to know to be able to follow that back? I mean, similar to how you would do compliance reporting for vulnerabilities and other things and understanding what you have within your environment. And AI really is going to follow that same should be following a similar track in your mind about how you should be working on governance. One good thing I can say though, with in the Yokohama release, they've released CSDM version 5.0. Now I don't have slides on that I can show, but one of the things that's important, that's relevant to at least this conversation, is that they have some new elements within that CSDM 5.0 that provide an area and support for data governance for the AI within ServiceNow. So there's a service delivery system, I guess, SDS system that they've added, and it has attributes to be able to tell what AI service accessed which data and be able to have basically a track record of that to give you the ability to have some visibility into what's being used and where it's being used. So there are movements in that fashion. Although I probably took too much time talking about that. But on that respect from data, if you think about and this knowledge graph is kind of an example of the the data that could be available to your AI as it's looking through and what's important for it. Again, to give context to that information. Now you have an LLM, and that LLM has been trained by ServiceNow to understand the data tables and the context of what is being done, whether it's a knowledge article or other things. But some of that's dependent on your teams as well. So how well are you building knowledge articles today? Are you providing case summarizations? Are your operators, entering good data within their incidents and exchanges in order to be able to make, the AI that much better? So, as you think about, the data that you have access to that your teams could be utilizing, what your teams are generating and putting within the ServiceNow system, and then even what data might be available outside. So a couple other new things that are coming in the Yokohama release is a data fabric. And so what that's going to enable you to do is access data outside of ServiceNow to be used by AI for its betterment. Um, this would be, looking at, clusters potential in AWS or other things. And they have a zero copy mechanism where it can look at that data, use it to, evaluate for AI, provide context, but then not copy that data in. So it's going to, ServiceNow is going to provide access to that data that's outside ServiceNow without having to copy and maintain it all. Now, I know that brings up a whole bunch more questions about, okay, I have access, but I'm not copying it. So there, probably some security concerns there. Um, and I think there's a question, but that data fabric, uh, trying to read that question. It is available as a separate SKU, I believe. They have a new Raptor DB database and data fabric, and I believe they're separate SKUs, Marianne, but I will try to get that feedback to you on how they're packaging that in particular, so you understand how you would be able to get to that. But if you think about it, you've got integrations with data that's outside, some of it you're building on, and then ServiceNow is continuing to build their service graph connectors to provide more and more access to that data. So again, your data that you have in place today is very important. And also thinking about how you use that data today to make sure that that the ServiceNow can take advantage of it. One last thing I want to, and I will keep coming back to this, is where you have those interactions with your customers or how your people interact with the data, because those are the areas where, again, you're going to leapfrog and get the value, from AI. I think we can go to the next one. I think I beat that slide up.
go back
Um,
one?
On the CSDM, I won't go into a ton of detail there. I did mention that there is a new CSDM 5.0 out. It does have support for that AI data governance, but the other thing around CSDM that can give you much more context is, are you utilizing business services and service business applications, um, application services, and other things within the platform today? Really, that common service data model sets an umbrella for the data that's in your CMDB for you to help to manage that over time. It also can very much help provide more context and support for AI. So, this is another area where there significant changes, I think, with what they're coming out with. I think there's a new um, data. They're going to have new training around data foundations. There's a new CMDB of, I guess, a certification that can be got as well this year. So they're investing a lot within the CMDB. They're investing a lot with this data fabric and the connections you can make, and all of those are related to and this Raptor DB in and of itself is a faster database to enable um, more and more actions so that your system doesn't get bogged down from running these AI searches or what have you. So they're trying to pull together a full story to support that. But again, if you're lacking a good CMDB, if you're lacking good usage of, existing data like knowledge articles and other things, um, you're going to have a tough time, getting quick value from the AI. Now, the good thing is if you do have good foundational elements there, you're going to be able to see, responsiveness uh, with Now Assist within, days and weeks. So that's a good thing. And this is really just kind of looking at, the improvements that you can make better on how better your data is and how much of that data you get to pull together. Um, you're just kind of looking at as you improve your data management processes, as you start improving how you're looking at your data analytics and making sure you have access to those and you're unifying that data, the more improvements you're going to be able to make around automation to support those operations. So, a lot of operational teams are working in the reactive state where, an incident happens on a machine, somebody calls on the phone and they're reacting afterwards. Um, Being able to build some responsiveness and working towards, level two or level three, implementing problem management, supporting, data and looking at, analytics and monitoring the data that you're supporting from your operational teams and those metrics that you're managing to interact with your teams. And then as you continue to move up the food chain there from intelligent more to self-healing, I mean, obviously, to get to intelligent, you need to be able to identify those things. So you need to be looking at not an incident where you have let's say, a trap thrown, but you need to start looking at data. So as you move to becoming more intelligent, you need to be basing more on a metric or looking at metrics if you're not looking at metrics today. Those are going to help you get ahead of the curve so you can identify when things are starting to happen versus just working off of, oh, something happened in the past. Some of the things that ServiceNow is providing to support that, and I think there's some new announcements and an ITOM release that I just got off as well. But there are health log analytics and some other things that they're providing. A lot of organizations support other log tools, whether it be Splunk or others. But again, that data and utilizing those metric data and bringing that back into the platform and however what fashion that makes sense is going to help you move ahead of that curve. And then as we get to more of a self-healing, you need to think about identifying those key elements that are happening more over time, and then which ones make sense to develop automations to actually remediate those by yourselves, or have the system remediate by yourselves. This is going to be a huge topic coming up as ServiceNow is announcing AI agents. We'll talk a little bit that about that as it's coming up, but it's really based on skill set, but it's le pulling together these things. Okay, I've identified an incident. Okay, now I'm going to go act on it. So you think about an automation that you might have built in the past, just with the ability to be less singular prescriptive, where it can, AKA, think for itself or adapt to multiple situations. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, and I think just one comment on this, Charles, and a question for you actually is um, some of the new AI capabilities that are coming out are going to be offered under different SKUs, right? So you're going to be like Pro Plus and things like that. And so when I see these, and we've been working on these maturity things for 30 years, right?
Yeah.
Um, the reality is that these maturity charts are all in context, right? So going from level one to two, three, four, it takes investment, right? It takes time, takes investment, takes maybe upping your licenses. So the business case has to be made on every one of these things. So like, is this really something that's going to drive value? And certainly there's low-hanging fruit that you might be able to go after. And sometimes you could say, okay, we want to be like a level four in certain critical applications and critical services that we're delivering, but we don't have to necessarily be level four for everything that we're doing. So I look at these maturity charts, somewhat contextually. And the one thing that, I want to kind of layer on top of this is the fact that um, nothing comes for free. And you may find yourself having to upgrade licenses and things like that in order to take advantage of some of this stuff. And we certainly can help you on that, trying to understand like where to make the investments and where not to. So
Yeah, I mean, I hate these, I don't know, I don't like these, these levels or what have you, because it's very difficult to align, right? I mean, an organization might have a rock star network management team, right? So they might be able to do self-healing because they're super good, but your, Unix server team is no chance, right? Because they're just not to that level yet, right? So there's level of maturity to be able to achieve this within or inside of organizations, right? So I almost, these they seem a little bit to me academic. I think they're good to describe the improvements that can be made, but you could have, each a 1 through 4 level on different teams within inside of one organization, in my opinion. But
absolutely. And the thing about it is too, is that Um, some of this stuff is driven by foundational stuff. So, like a really good example, we were working with a healthcare company, large, everybody would know who they are, and we had to integrate into their CMDB, their ServiceNow CMDB. We had to pull certain information out because we were going to be looking at building some workflow on that. And as we started pulling the information out, like half of the CIs weren't populated with data. Most of them didn't have even the vendor data. So if you wanted to go in and say of these, 250,000 CIs that we're looking at, I think the number is way higher than that. Um, and we want to filter out everything that's related to Microsoft because we just weren't focused on Microsoft as a use case. We couldn't do that. We literally couldn't do it because none of the CIs had the vendors in there, so we couldn't tell what was what, right? So then we had to build pretty expansive rules to look at other data inside the CI to say, is there some type of keyword in there you know, that would indicate what vendor it was. So there's a fair amount of work that sometimes has to be done to move up to these levels. All right, so let's talk a little bit more around generative. So we're at half an hour, so we'll spend like maybe 10 minutes on this, and then Charles, then we'll go into Q&A. So I'm just going to let you rip on this.
okay, sure. Again, if we think of the context before us, we had the services groups, employees, and those operational teams, like, where generative AI, fits, um, and what's available within ServiceNow, to support those use cases. So, I'm going to talk through some of the features that are coming and that are available with generative AI and a little bit with what's available with the agents. But, these are some example solutions where, creating, improving search for your team. So just having search available and with context in any window that they might have open within the Now platform, created, knowledge creation, which is another example. Is another great use case where you could have incidents coming in and have the AI suggest and or write suggested knowledge articles for you to improve where you sit from a knowledge article position today. The incident summarization and other text, and these are really out of the box features. And if I think about a team starting on their journey with Now Assist and Gen AI is really starting at the simplest step. So looking at overall search, implementing case summarization or incident summarization, doing chat summarization, getting the ability to improve each worker within your organization, give them better context to the data that they're being provided to do their jobs, and there's a set of improvements there. And then you can start improving, and building upon that, depending on how sophisticated your inputs or your interactions are with those team members to where you can get more value. Um, I'll go to the next slide. I'm gonna try to go quick. Um, so one of the new things that's coming out in Yokohama, I guess, but it's probably being released as a store release, is this AI agents. So, ServiceNow has been talking about this probably for the last, a month, I guess, month and a half. It was very funny because I was at SKO and they were describing, the old way was generative AI, which they launched last year, and the new is, or the now is agent based AI, right? And then obviously maybe something in the future, but how quickly they're moving. It's an interesting adage too to think about. Obviously they're moving in this direction and where they're going to be in 2 years from now, and starting to adopt or understanding some of these concepts well, so you can take advantage of it before they're way far ahead. But the idea here is really that if you think about, you can generate or define a skill within to support an AI agent. So each skill that you could develop inside of ServiceNow, it's really the core of what activities are done from, even what's available within ServiceNow. Let's say like knowledge creation. So that's a skill behind that in order to take, roll up the data that was in the incident. And basically that skill is built up of, I've got a user that's going to be accessing this. I have a prompt that I want to prompt that as input to this. I have a data set that I'm going to look at, and then I'm going to have an output that I want to provide that data from. So what ServiceNow is doing is building these individual agents to do different activities. So if you look at this example, um, there's an agent that will be looking at, priority prediction. And the concept here is if you think about the way generative AI worked in ServiceNow prior, everything was based on a UI action. So the user had to type in something or do in a chat. And so it was an interactive action from a user. What the AI agents are bringing to the table is be able to run quote unquote autonomously. So this agent could be running in the background, looking for priority predictions, running a prediction every so often, identifying it, and then it would hand it off to the next agent who would, assign a recommendation. The interesting thing is here is that, each of these agents can perform multiple functions, right? Singular functions, and using the AI orchestrator, you can stitch them all together to start performing work, like an individual would. And the interesting thing is that, this shows a very linear path of, oh, priority prediction, I'm an assignment, recommendation, see where the user's angry, look up knowledge. But there could be, this could bifurcate out to a different area where, maybe the sentiment says that the customer's angry. So maybe I switch my process so that once it notifies it's angry, then it goes to a different step. And the AI can think through things like that based on, what it's determining and what it's seeing and interacting with. So this is just an example of like an incident triage built from an AI agent, um, which will be coming soon. So it's very interesting. They've tasked the partner community to go build skills and basically building these individual agents that can go do perform pieces of work. So as I look into, 6 months from now, there should be a pretty wealthy, list and, pile of these different agents that can do, different functions for the organization. So it's going to be interesting to see uh, what innovations are made. And yeah, this slide looks, I think I think my comment here, and I know I gotta wrap up quick because I think I went over my time, is really focusing on, what comes out of the box first. Start with search, um, move that Now Assist side panel in so that you can have conversational interaction with your employees as they're, and this is not for, um, necessarily a chat bot, but this Now Assist side panel would sit next to any screen that's available in ServiceNow. So if I have open, let's say, incident workspace, and this Now Assist panel would be sitting right next to it, so I could ask it a question inside the Now Assist panel, and it could perform and give me answers in context of that incident that I'm working on currently today. So there's some very interesting things that could be done there. To improve the experience for your employees and drive those things forward. Incident summarization, providing summarizations for those. Again, those are great for pass-offs between individuals, raising from tier one to tier two. Resolution note generation, just saving time for your teams. And then I think we've got a break on the slide, but um, and then the last one is just around virtual agent and chat. We could have a long conversation about chat and the areas to support and the innovations in chat. One of the things that's interesting, um, that if you had done any development work for chat and inside of ServiceNow, it was almost like an automation. You had to every little response or any action you wanted, you had to code. So it was like building an automation platform, and you had to think about all the answers. I think one of the good things that Now Assist is going to bring to that is the ability to do that easier and at scale. So we can go to the next slide. Um, and if you think about what's available in ITOM today, it really just aligns around alert simplification, but I don't want to simplify that too much because what's coming out in Yokohama is much more automation. It's going to, have automated remediation recommendations, so it can look at your your event streams that are coming in, identify resolutions that ought to happen or ought to be automated. It's called LEAP. Um, and I have to figure out what that acronym means. But there's certainly some more advancements coming on the ITOM space, and quite a few of them to take more advantage of AI and use Now Assist along with that. But what's currently available today, Now Assist, is really just around the alert simplification. One thing I did learn today, though, in the ITOM release is that there are Now Assist for CMDB and for some of the core components that gives you the ability to do deduplication in your CMDB and some other things through Now Assist. But that's only licensed, that's not licensed with ITOM, which seems strange to me because ITOM's one of the functions is to help you build your CMDB, but the CMDB function is a part of core, which only comes with ITSM or CSM. Anyway, um, do we want to open it up for questions? I think we got like 10 minutes left or 5 minutes left. I don't know how we are.
Um, yeah, why don't we do, well, yeah, we can, but let's just run through, wait, any highlights on this screen? I think
Uh,
people can read.
Well, analysis for creator really is going to bring the ability for your development teams to generate items. So it's code generation, flow generation, application creation. It can generate UI or dashboards for you as well. So there's a lot of, I think I view the Now Assist for Creator as where all the really cool stuff can happen, where you can be very inventive and add, value back or some really interesting use cases. Um, But again, this is licensed separately, and so you could get a few licenses here. It's an easy entry point, I think, for customers. But again, that bottom line there is just really around that Now Assist skill kit. That Now Assist skill kit is really the foundation of where they're building the agents and where the agent foundation building stuff is coming from. So I think that's important. Um, One of the things I just want to talk about, onboarding, as I mentioned, easy entry points. ServiceNow does have a easy entry point licensing. I think it's like 25K. Don't quote me on the number, but you can buy Now Assist for any one of the modules for like 25K, and then they give you a set of units, right, of questions that the AI can answer, and then if you meet the minimum. So let's say I do it for ITSM and it gives me, let's say, 100,000 queries within, of AI. If you use them, then they give you 500,000 more licenses for more queries for the rest of them. But you have to use those 100,000 licenses in 6 months. So you can either view it as a hook or a way to get in, right? So it could be a good way to get in where you can get a easy cost of entry, but again, but then I don't know what the next year renewal comes in, but it's very, very cheap to get you started.
Yeah. So we do have one question for you. So the question comes from Edward Bro Brailovsky. So I think you're looking at it, but like, one of the challenges is missing information, right? Or missing evidence that may block the ability of the operators to, to have enough information to make decisions, specifically, resolve the issue because they're just missing gaps. Where do you see AI fixing that? I mean, it sounds to me like the more we can build some of these agents and these that do very specific things, that would be a good place to start.
Yeah. So typically when we think about, especially where we would start even though I was thinking about an automation case, right, in the same vein, and you're looking at incidents coming in and what data has been collected and what data is available. Some of the things we can do is enrichment, right? So you can think about the AI maybe performing some enrichment for you. So if it comes in and it might be tied to a particular CI, go garnering all the data from that particular CI and bringing it back in to see what changes have been made on it recently, what customers it might be supporting or other information. So I know in event management, data augmentation is a clear use case, and it's really to help augment this ability, right? So that you can gather all the data. Like, what minimum data do I need to make those decisions? And then work backwards from there. Is that data available for me to access? Then can I augment that data availability related to either, of the data that's provided, either from the customer, the user, what laptops he might have available. So I think the first answer is if you can answer what data you need in order to make those decisions, and then see if that data is available somewhere, and then look at how can I do some data augmentation or data enrichment to support that case. So that would be my first step. And
Yeah, and I think mechanically how to get there is like not only using some of the agent technology to look at the data within the ServiceNow platform, but using the data fabric to go to external sources and grab that data out too, I think would be very useful. But yeah, it's kind of hard to really know how to go after the data when you don't know exactly what the questions are. So we've got another question here. Charles, you want to take that from Edward?
okay, in that case,
You want to read it out loud? So
okay,
Ed's
this question
question is,
is basically, I think on my answer is that
well, why don't we read the question first? So, like, so Ed's question is, in the case that you will need to employ prescriptive data model, not predictive ones that you referred to earlier, do you employ prescriptive models?
yeah. So Edward initially asked about instant triage and data gaps. Um, when I think about being more predictive, as I stated earlier, Again, it's based on, getting metrics or getting metric data to be predictive. Um, so, maybe Edward, we can carry that farther, but, typically without data, you're not going to be able to make those, make determinations, right? Whether it's being from, applying an algorithm to the data that you're looking at or what you have. So, there are abilities to, have a specific directive or prescriptive model to support some of this. I think the interesting things, but I also think having the data to support that decision-making process is important as well, and what data is available to you. So again, and then whether you use a prescriptive model or something more predictive, really the fundamentals still rely on that base data and the availability of that data. And in some cases, if you don't have the data, then you won't be able to make, maybe that one is an admitted case. But you're getting the 80% that do have that data. Anyway, um, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I think predictive models are um, very data intensive, right? Because in order to do predictive, you may have to be looking at performance of a particular service over time in the past,
Yep.
right? And see, okay, how was that performing in the past? If the services performs at a very high consumption mode, that may be normal compared to other services that don't. So that's where you start looking at data lakes and things like that to basically store vast amounts of data so you can use predictive models to go in and start looking at, are we seeing trends? Are we seeing things like that? Um, and that's one is very data intensive and it's very consumption intensive, right?
Yeah.
Compute intensive. So
Yeah, and I think, obviously it all depends on data at the end of the day, but I think, for each of those cases, um, looking at a prescriptive model that, attends to 80% of your cases is probably, the best approach unless there's a large gap in that. But if you want to look more predictive, again, I think you need more data to support
yeah.
it.
So why don't we just I don't see any more questions coming in, so we can just keep the questions coming. What's this? You wanna jump through a couple of these use cases real quick?
Yeah, are we okay on time? I don't know if we're over or
Yeah, well, we're over, but we'll just keep going for 10
okay.
more minutes.
All right. Well,
Technically, we were scheduled for an hour, but I try to keep it for. But so if anybody wants to drop off, then you certainly can. Um, and we will actually send out the video for you so you can catch up on these last 10 minutes if you need to jump. Um, we'll have our marketing team email out everybody the link to this. So we might as well just keep going for the last 10 more minutes.
Yeah, so
Uh,
these two cases, really, one is around TSOM. We do support telco providers as well, kind of historically, but this is just an example, not from just really around looking at the improvements you can make around ITOM and looking at that event layer and providing more data right into that event stream so there's more context to that data and allowing a filtering of noise and being able to find those actionable alerts. So there's a lot of capability there that can support both, what you might already have today from deduplication and cleaning, but also the ability to be able to add more of this supportive or summarizing data around these A, the CIs, and B, the event streams as they're coming in, allow you to, provide a lot better value at the event management layer if you're using event management. We can go to the next one. And this one's more, around incident management and providing of services. So, really helping those customer service agents to be able to deliver value quicker. Um, looking at resolution time improvement of 4.5 times, onboarding of, new customers. So, and again, this is where identifying the use cases that are going to bring value back to your organization, understanding where those value plays are that align with what your goals are, and building a strategic plan to get there is kind of one of the key things as you look where these organizations are getting outcomes of reduction in incidents, faster resolution times, and then what makes up that so that you could build a plan in order to, apply the AI appropriately to get those outcomes. So, and I think the next few slides are really just, how do I get started? So, starting with a solid foundation, again, identifying those use cases and thinking about those interactions between the people and the data or, or the people in your services, right? So, because those are the key areas where what ServiceNow brings to the table that's going to provide the most value. Um, Again, looking for any way to automate, again, utilizing these services and other self-service options, be it through Service Catalog and others, and then continue to measure and look for, for better improvements as time goes on. The key thing really is starting, starting with what comes out of the box, and then understanding what the technology brings, and then building a plan to align with that. We can go to the next slide.
Yeah, I'll just make one comment on this. This is
Sure.
very similar to, getting into the ServiceNow game in the first place with workflow development. And it's really like, okay, what is the thing you're trying to automate? What is the use case you're trying to do? Um, Sketching out, what the workflow should be, where the data sources are to activate that, then automating that through the workflow engine and then optimizing it. And then the other thing is going back over time and looking at it, measuring those workflows. How effective were they? Some of the things in the workflow that were manual, can you now make automated? It's a continual process. It's one of the things we call process in our services area. We call process optimization. So it's not just the design and build of the workflow, it's the optimizing it. So letting it run for a while, measuring it, coming back, making changes. We see the exact same thing in the AI space. These AI agents that we're going to be building, how well are they running? What are they doing? How can we make them more efficient? Can we connect them to other AI agents that are doing very specific things and start daisy chaining some of these things together? That's all going to come with time, and getting more and more familiar. But building a process by which you go back and look at the things that you've built, see how they're working, and then optimizing them is kind of best practices.
And then here are just areas where Windward can support you. So, we've got a host of folks that are trained, on Now Assist. If your team wants to understand better, have some training to understand, what the po art of possible is. We can work on doing an assessment of trying to help you identify what outcomes are important to you. Doing some, understanding of what your, business goals and objectives are and how we can drive to that to kind of build you a roadmap and plan. Um, we can help you with implementation. We can help you with your teams learning how to utilize what's there. I think we're running a training session for one of our customers here in a couple of weeks on, use the skill kit, and what the inputs are and how to best use that for their development teams. And then, maybe you are already started and want to get better improvement and want to work to optimize it. As I look at where ServiceNow is going, I think, that option of all the agents are coming out. There's going to be a whole host of that, coming out from an automation perspective. And, there's probably a lot of opportunity for, reduction in the amount of effort it takes to provide support and operations. But we need to, be able to target that against the problems that your organization is having. So, helping you optimize as you're moving ahead in those value are other areas where we can help as well. So more than happy to pick up conversations with, each and all of you. If there's any interest, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm sure maybe one of our team members might be reaching out to you. So thank you for
So,
joining.
so like I said, everybody who's been on here will get a copy of this link to this presentation. Our contact information will be on there. We are always a resource. Anybody who comes into our orbit through any means, whether you're a client or just somebody that we know, we're always a resource to our friends. So if you have questions or anything like that, no strings attached, just give us a call or reach out to us, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. Hop on the phone, brainstorm an idea for you or something like that. So with that, I don't see any more questions coming in. So I appreciate everybody joining us, and thank you very much. And like I said, be on the lookout in, a couple months when we start releasing some of our AI governance type work that we're doing there that we're finding very, very interesting right now, and it's probably going to pick up steam very, very quickly and very heavily over the coming 12 months. So take care. And Charles, thank you. Thanks a lot for being on. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Sean. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.